The streets of East Brooklyn were loud that afternoon, car horns blaring, street vendors shouting, the distant sound of kids playing basketball echoing off brick walls. But in the middle of all that noise, one sound sliced through everything like glass shattering. A scream. Not the kind you hear in an argument, not the kind you hear when someone's startled. This was raw, desperate, drenched in pain. It came from a narrow corner just outside a small grocery store on Jefferson Avenue. "Stop, please, I do anything." On the cracked pavement, hunched over and trembling, was Mrs. Eloise Carter, a frail 72-year-old woman who'd lived in that neighborhood all her life. She was small, barely 5 feet tall, her hair a soft cloud of white. In her hands was a wrinkled paper bag filled with groceries, a carton of milk, 2 loaves of bread, and a small tin of tea leaves. She had just bought them with her pension money. Standing over her were 2 uniformed white police officers, Officer Brad Whitman and Officer Cole Rivers, both tall, muscular, and radiating that kind of cold authority that didn't invite questions. One had his knee pressed into her back, the other yanked her arm so hard it looked like it could pop out of its socket. "Stop resisting," Officer Whitman barked. "I'm not resisting," Mrs. Carter cried, her voice breaking. "I can't breathe, my chest." "Shut up," Rivers snapped, grabbing the grocery bag and tossing it aside. The milk carton burst open, spilling white liquid onto the dusty sidewalk. A loaf of bread rolled into the gutter. People stopped walking, some pulled out their phones, a few muttered under their breath, but nobody stepped forward. In neighborhoods like this, stepping forward often meant becoming the next victim. From the crowd, a young man whispered to his friend, "Man, that's Eloise, she's the one who gives kids cookies every Christmas." His friend's jaw clenched, but he shook his head. "We can't do nothing, you know how it goes." The officers kept shouting orders, their voices sharp and rehearsed. "You match the description of a shoplifter," Rivers accused. Mrs. Carter's lips trembled. "I've been coming to this store for 30 years, the owner knows me, please, I just want to go home." Her words were cut off by a sharp crack. Whitman's baton slammed into her side. She gasped, clutching her ribs. The crowd murmured, some filming, others turning away in discomfort. But one person wasn't turning away. At the far end of the block, a black SUV had just pulled up. Out stepped a broad-shouldered man with a familiar face, dark skin, tribal tattoo on his face, his build still intimidating even though his boxing days were behind him. Mike Tyson. He was in town for a charity event at a local youth center. He had been signing autographs just a few streets over when he heard the commotion. At first, he thought it was just another street argument, but then he saw the 2 officers and the small, frail woman pinned beneath them. Tyson's eyes narrowed. In an instant, he was moving, his long strides cutting through the bystanders. People began to murmur as they recognized him. "Yo, that's Mike Tyson," someone whispered. Another person muttered, "Oh man, this about to be something." "Hey," Tyson's voice boomed across the street, "get your hands off her." The officers froze for a split second, then turned toward him. Whitman frowned. "Sir, step back, this is official police business." Tyson didn't slow down. "Official business? She's 70 years old, what the hell are you doing?" "She resisted arrest," Rivers shot back. "No, she didn't," Tyson said, his voice now dangerously low. "I've been watching for 10 seconds and all I see is 2 grown men beating on someone's grandma." Whitman stepped toward him. "Sir, if you don't back off." Tyson took another step forward, his massive frame now towering over both officers. His eyes were locked on them, cold and unblinking. "You going to arrest me too?" Tyson asked, his tone calm but dripping with challenge. "Go ahead, put your hands on me and see how fast this video goes viral." By now, several people in the crowd had their phones up, recording every second. The energy in the air shifted. The officers knew it. "Sir, we need you to calm down," Rivers said, his voice faltering. "No," Tyson said flatly, "you need to calm down and let her go." Whitman glanced at his partner, muttering something under his breath. Slowly, they loosened their grip on Mrs. Carter. She slumped forward, coughing, clutching her side. Tyson immediately crouched beside her, helping her up gently. "You okay, ma'am?" he asked, his voice softer now. I think so," she whispered, her eyes watery. They said I stole something, I did." Tyson turned his head toward the officers, his jaw clenched so tight it looked like stone. She's coming with me, and you, he pointed at both of them, better hope this doesn't ruin your careers. The crowd erupted, some cheering, some shouting curses at the officers. Whitman and Rivers stepped back, clearly rattled but trying to hold on to whatever authority they thought they had left. Tyson slipped an arm around Mrs. Carter and began guiding her toward his SUV. Every step away from that corner felt like pulling her out of a storm. But deep down, Tyson knew this wasn't over. This wasn't just about one woman being assaulted. It was about something uglier, deeper, a system that allowed moments like this to happen over and over. As they reached his car, Mrs. Carter's voice shook. "Thank you, I don't know what would have happened if you didn't come." Tyson glanced back toward the crowd and the officers still standing there. "You'd have gone to jail for stealing something you paid for," he said bitterly, "and maybe worse." He opened the car door for her, but they picked the wrong grandma today. In the rearview mirror, Tyson saw the flashing blue lights fade into the distance. He didn't know it yet, but that day would go viral. Every second of it, filmed from multiple angles, was already being uploaded online. And once the world saw what happened to Mrs. Eloise Carter, the fight was just beginning. By the time Tyson got Mrs. Carter home, the video was everywhere. Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook. Some clips were just 30 seconds, Tyson storming in, towering over the officers. Others showed the full thing, from the moment the baton struck her ribs to the moment she was helped into Tyson's SUV. The captions burned with outrage. "White cops assault elderly black woman, saved by Mike Tyson." "Brooklyn's grandma rescued by the champ." "This is why we record everything." In less than 3 hours, the video had 3 million views. By evening, it had doubled. But not everyone was on Mrs. Carter's side. The police department's press office moved fast. They released a carefully worded statement. On August 14th, officers responded to a shoplifting report at a grocery store on Jefferson Avenue. The suspect, a 72-year-old female, matched the description given by the store clerk. She resisted questioning and became physically non-compliant, prompting officers to take necessary measures to ensure safety. The department is reviewing the incident. It didn't take long before certain news channels ran with the "she resisted" narrative. A grainy still image of Mrs. Carter with her arm up, a frozen frame from the video, was shown as evidence that she was aggressive. In her tiny living room, Mrs. Carter sat on her old floral couch holding a warm mug of tea. Tyson sat opposite her, scrolling through his phone, jaw tight. "They're twisting it," he muttered. "They're really out here making you the villain." Mrs. Carter smiled faintly, though her ribs still ached. "Mike, I've lived long enough to know they always twist it." "But not this time," Tyson said firmly. "This time people are watching." That night, Tyson posted the full unedited video on his own social media pages with the caption, "No one's grandmother should be treated like this, ever." Within hours, his post had over 1 million likes and tens of thousands of comments, from celebrities, athletes, and ordinary people. The hashtags "Justice for Eloise" and "Hands Off Our Elders" began trending worldwide. But with the love came the hate. On his Twitter feed, Tyson started getting messages like, "Stay in your lane, boxer boy. You don't understand law enforcement. She was a suspect, you interfered." Some were even worse, ugly, racist messages that Tyson had seen too many times before. He didn't reply to them, but each one chipped away at him. Meanwhile, down at the 11th precinct, officers Whitman and Rivers sat in a cramped office while their union rep paced. "This is bad," the rep muttered. "This isn't some random activist, it's Mike Tyson. Every punch he's ever thrown in the ring is nothing compared to the PR knockout he's about to land on you too." Whitman leaned back in his chair. "She matched the description, we were doing our jobs." "Yeah," Rivers added, "she refused to show ID." The rep shook his head. "That's not what the public sees. They see 2 big white cops beating up a little old black lady and a famous boxer swooping in like a hero. The optics are garbage. You're both going to be on desk duty until this blows over." Whitman's jaw clenched. "We didn't do anything wrong." The rep sighed. "That doesn't matter anymore. Public opinion doesn't care about your report." 2 days later, Tyson and Mrs. Carter appeared on a live morning talk show. The host leaned forward, voice dripping with sympathy. "Mrs. Carter, can you tell us what happened that day?" Mrs. Carter glanced at Tyson, then at the camera. I went to buy groceries. I was walking home when the officers stopped me. They said I'd stolen something from the store. I told them I paid for everything. I even had the receipt in my bag, but before I could show them, one of them grabbed my arm. It all happened so fast, next thing I knew I was on the ground. The host turned to Tyson, and what made you step in? Tyson's voice was calm but heavy with conviction. I don't like bullies, and I don't care if they're wearing a uniform or not. Wrong is wrong. The clip of that moment went viral too. But behind the public interviews and trending hashtags, something else was brewing, something Tyson didn't expect. 3 journalists began digging into Mrs. Carter's life for background. They found no criminal record, no history of violence, but they did find something surprising. 50 years ago, Eloise Carter had been one of the youngest members of a civil rights protest in Brooklyn that turned violent after police tried to break it up. She'd been photographed being dragged away by officers, her face bloodied but her eyes fierce. The photo had been printed in newspapers across the country. When one of the journalists brought the old photo to her door, Mrs. Carter's hands trembled. I didn't think anyone would remember that. Tyson looked at her in awe. You've been fighting this fight your whole life. Mrs. Carter smiled sadly. And I'll keep fighting, but I'm tired, Mike, tired of seeing the same things happen again and again. By the end of the week, the police department announced an internal investigation. To Tyson, that phrase was just code for we'll wait until the public moves on. He'd seen it before. So he made a decision. He called up a friend, a lawyer named Carmen Rivera, known for her fierce courtroom style and zero tolerance for injustice. Carmen, Tyson said, I need you to take a case. It's not about money, it's about making them answer for what they did. You're talking about suing the NYPD, she asked. Yeah, Tyson said, and winning. As the lawsuit paperwork began to take shape, Mrs. Carter started getting visits from strangers, people who had seen the video and just wanted to thank her for standing up. Some brought flowers, some brought letters. One young mother came with her 8-year-old son and said, he needs to see what courage looks like. But not all visitors were friendly. One evening, as Tyson was leaving her apartment, a man in plain clothes approached him. Word of advice, the man said quietly, you don't want to make enemies in the department, back off. Tyson looked him dead in the eyes. If they wanted me to back off, they should have left her alone. The tension kept building. Protesters began showing up outside the precinct with signs. Justice for Eloise. Protect our elders. No badges above the law. News crews swarmed the scene. Officers coming and going from the building looked uneasy. Whitman and Rivers, still on desk duty, watched from an upstairs window. They're making this bigger than it needs to be, Rivers muttered. Whitman didn't answer, he just stared at the crowd, the chants echoing in his ears. A week later, something happened that shifted the story entirely. A new video surfaced, this one from a security camera outside the grocery store. It showed Mrs. Carter entering, shopping, paying at the register, and leaving peacefully. The timestamp matched the moment just before she was stopped by Whitman and Rivers. There was no theft, no suspicious behavior, nothing. When the footage hit the internet, it was like gasoline on a fire. Tyson sat beside Mrs. Carter in her living room as the video played on her old TV. They can't spin this now, he said. Mrs. Carter shook her head. Oh, they'll try, but the truth's out. The grocery store owner came forward too, holding a copy of her receipt. She's been my customer for decades, he told reporters. This was wrong, plain and simple. Within hours, the department's internal investigation became an official misconduct probe. Whitman and Rivers were suspended without pay pending the outcome. But for Tyson, suspension wasn't enough. They humiliated her in front of her own neighborhood, he told Carmen. They could have killed her, we're not stopping here. And as the lawsuit moved forward, Tyson knew the fight was no longer just about Mrs. Carter. It was about every person who had been stopped, beaten, or accused simply because of the color of their skin. It was about making sure that when a badge was abused, it carried consequences. It was about sending a message loud enough that it couldn't be ignored. And the whole world was listening. The day of the trial felt like the whole city had been holding its breath. Outside the Brooklyn courthouse, protesters lined the steps holding signs with Mrs. Carter's face on them. TV cameras crowded every corner and reporters shouted into microphones, giving live updates. The atmosphere was tense, like a storm about to break. Inside, the courtroom was packed. Tyson sat beside Mrs. Carter at the plaintiff's table, his massive frame looking almost too big for the wooden bench. On her other side sat Carmen Rivera, sharp in a navy suit, flipping through her notes like a general ready for battle. Across the room, officers Whitman and Rivers sat stiffly in their uniforms, their lawyers whispering in their ears. Neither looked at Mrs. Carter. The judge, an older black man with steel-gray hair, called the room to order. Carmen opened, her voice was clear, every word cutting through the courtroom like a bell. Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case is simple. An innocent, elderly woman was assaulted and humiliated in public by two men who swore to protect her. She was accused of a crime she did not commit, she was injured, she was frightened, and the only reason she is sitting here alive is because someone stepped in. She turned toward Tyson, and that someone was Mike Tyson, but this case isn't about celebrity, it's about justice. The prosecution's case was built on three pillars: the security footage from the grocery store, eyewitness testimony, and the officer's own bodycam recordings. When the grocery store video was played, the jury leaned forward. It showed Mrs. Carter moving slowly through the aisles, selecting her groceries, paying at the counter, and walking out with a smile to the cashier. Does this look like a shoplifter to you? Carmen asked the jury. Then came the eyewitnesses. A teenage boy who had been filming from across the street, a young mother who'd been too afraid to speak up at the scene, an older man who said he'd known Mrs. Carter for 40 years. Each one told the same story: she hadn't resisted, she'd been calm, and the officers had been aggressive from the start. Finally, the bodycam footage was played. The room fell silent as the grainy video showed Whitman and Rivers confronting Mrs. Carter. Her voice trembled as she tried to explain. They cut her off. Within seconds, she was on the ground. The sound of her cry when the baton hit her ribs made one juror flinch. When it was the defense's turn, they tried to argue that the officers had acted in good faith based on a mistaken description. Whitman testified first. He claimed he'd received a call about a petite black female shoplifter wearing a light-colored coat, the same kind Mrs. Carter wore. She refused to comply, he insisted. Carmen stood. Officer Whitman, can you explain why, if she was resisting, the bodycam footage shows her holding a grocery receipt and saying she can prove she paid? Whitman hesitated. We couldn't confirm at the time. And instead of confirming, you hit her with a baton. He shifted uncomfortably. I followed protocol. Carmen's voice sharpened. Is it protocol to strike a 72-year-old woman before verifying she did anything wrong? Whitman didn't answer. Then came Rivers. He was more defiant, insisting they had no choice. Carmen leaned in. No choice but to throw her groceries on the ground, no choice but to twist her arm, no choice but to ignore her pleas. Rivers' jaw tightened. We were securing the scene. Carmen stepped back, looking at the jury. And you see the result of that so-called security right in front of you. Finally, Tyson was called to the stand. The room buzzed with cameras flashing as he walked up, took the oath, and sat down. Mr. Tyson, Carmen began, tell us what you saw that day. Tyson's voice was steady but carried weight. I saw two big guys in uniform roughing up someone who looked like my grandmother. I don't care what your badge says, you don't put your hands on an old lady like that unless she's a danger. And she was scared, she was crying, and they didn't stop until I stepped in. The defense lawyer smirked. So you decided to insert yourself into a police matter? Tyson's eyes narrowed. No, I decided to stop a beating, there's a difference. The courtroom murmured in approval. Closing arguments came quick. Carmen's words hit like a hammer. If we let this slide, we are saying that anyone with a badge can hurt the people they swore to protect and face no consequences. If we let this slide, we are saying Mrs. Carter's pain doesn't matter. And if we let this slide, we are telling every grandmother in America that they are fair game. That cannot be the message we send today. The defense tried one last time to lean on mistaken identity and split-second decisions, but their arguments felt hollow against the mountain of evidence. The jury deliberated for only 3 hours. When they returned, the foreman stood. "We find the defendants liable for assault, battery, and violation of civil rights." The judge nodded. "And the damages?" $2 million in compensatory damages, the foreman read, and $3 million in punitive damages. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Whitman and Rivers sat frozen, their careers shattered. Mrs. Carter's hands trembled as she looked at Tyson. I don't know what to say." Tyson smiled gently. "Say you'll buy a lot more tea and bread." Outside, the courthouse steps exploded with cheers. Reporters swarmed, microphones everywhere. Mrs. Carter spoke first. "This wasn't just for me, this was for everyone who's ever been treated like they don't matter. Today, the court said we do matter." Tyson stepped to the mic next. "I'm not a politician, I'm not a lawyer, but I know right from wrong, and I know this: the fight for justice doesn't end here, it's just another round, and I'm ready for the bell." In the weeks that followed, the case sparked national conversations about police accountability. Cities across the country passed new measures for handling elderly suspects. Training programs were restructured, and Mrs. Carter, once just a quiet grandmother from Brooklyn, became a symbol of dignity and resilience. Tyson continued to check in on her, sometimes dropping by with groceries, sometimes just sitting and listening to her stories. One day, she told him something that stuck with him. "Mike," she said, "people think courage is about stepping into danger, but sometimes courage is just standing up when the world tells you to stay down." Months later, as they sat on her porch watching kids ride by on bikes, Tyson glanced at her and said, "You know, you changed more lives than you'll ever know." Mrs. Carter chuckled. "We both did, and maybe, just maybe, the next time someone sees a badge and a baton, they'll remember this." And that's where their chapter closed, not with bitterness, not with fear, but with the quiet power of knowing they'd forced the world to pay attention. If you saw something like this happening in front of you, would you step in, or would you walk away? Comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more powerful, real-life stories that matter.